Hello, everyone. Welcome to Osquery office hours. Here we are, August, so always nice. I see a couple of new names in our list here. Anyhow, first section is announcements and highlights. I don't think I've seen any announcements or highlights. Anyone else? Okay. Next up, generally have sort of an open section for any questions or issues or PRs people want to discuss. This is a great time if you're sort of here with a question or, one of the people joining us for the first time. If you've got anything you want to ask about, anything you want to say, now's a great time to ask it.
And I don't know if anyone that's new to this has been in that discussion about stall paths, but there's like a 50 reply thread in one of our channels, and I invited them to come here if we wanted to discuss that further. But it was a discussion, if I'm summarizing correctly, about whether to make certain aspects of Osquery configurable. The install, I mean. Is anyone here that wants to represent their wish list item there? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
So my rationale behind it was looking at the recent CAISA text, if that's what you call it, the name of the RMM tool that was recently exploited, and the ransomware that was running rampant on the systems as a result of that. It was seen to be using things like known paths of antiviruses on the system to then go and shut down the antivirus and that kind of thing. So my thinking from that was that, well, if we're all running Osquery and the service that we're running Osquery D, it's sitting there named as that, then any bad process come down, just look for that and turn it off straight away. So I was thinking that if at least we could customize that for our own environment. So sure, maybe it's consistent across our fleet. So I might call it, I don't know, anything, Osquery J, or I probably wouldn't even put the word Osquery in it. But it's just something that's not predictable. So a bad process comes down, it doesn't just straight away look for, if it just looks is Osquery D in the service list, yes, I'll turn it off. Well, in this case, it can't do that, and that's where I was going with it.
So I'm a little bit on I guess I'm somewhat against it. Osquery itself can be relocated. So there is nothing inside Osquery that depends on these paths. And for example, Collide installs it somewhere else with our own installer. And if you were to use the existing, so I guess this is a little bit of an ask of like making the Osquery provided packaging tools accept sort of arbitrary pathing. And I guess I'm not against that. It doesn't particularly seem valuable to me because I feel like if you care about this a lot, you kind of need to just roll your own packages. But if the packaging people thought it was easy, that would be fine. Maybe a bigger issue is that that's going to bump up into code signing issues, at least on macOS, because Osquery will end up signing and distributing endpoint security signed binaries, which you can't just relocate those. I mean, you can, but en masse.
For me, I was thinking more of the focus on Windows. I mean, I'm deploying Osquery through my own RMM, so I actually have a PowerShell script that just grabs the MSI, Osquery MSI from osquery.io and installs it. So, I mean, if the MSI installer I think even now you can actually configure the path with the MSI installer. I think you can configure where it's actually saving it, but you can't configure the service name. I mean, something as simple as just allowing us to set the service name as a parameter in the MSI or something would be fantastic. I think if it's doable. But then again, I say if it's doable, I have no idea if it is or not.
Well, okay.
Question. Sorry, question. Are we also talking about we were also talking about the Osquery binary name, right? Or
I would imagine so. I mean, if you change the name, if you change the service name, you're going to want to change the binary name, yeah.
Yeah, that poses a secondary problem, which is that Osquery internally has features, let's say, to know if another instance of Osquery is running and avoid to run if that happens, because you cannot access 2 times the same RocksDB database, and then maybe also other issues.
Is that by process name?
Sorry?
Is that by process name?
Yeah, though normally they are similar. They are the same if you are changing the binary name.
I thought we just took a lock.
You're setting.
I thought we just took a lock on the file system.
I mean, yeah. So this is already it is what it is doing for the RocksDB database. I missed something. Oh, no. And so it is already doing that for RocksDB, but we sort of covering other possible use cases. Although, admittedly, right now I have 9 in mind, because technically Osquery shouldn't write anything else beyond the RocksDB database. But yeah, we are covering that situation with creating a PID file that tracks the PID of the process, and also we are then reading that PID file and checking if a process with the Osquery name corresponds to that PID file, and so on. So yeah, we would also kind of sort of lose that if we are going to, because yeah, the names are coded, unless again you save somewhere where is the binary name, but then again the ransomware or malware can know where the name is and read it.
Yeah, well, that's right. Yeah.
I think probably the other thing is this feels like it may be a lot of work for something that is not a real attack vector. So I'm not sure. Like I feel like I'd feel very different if we saw if this was a common attack route against Osquery installs.
I believe that it is an attack vector for anti-malware. Osquery might not be high profile enough, or it may not be something that necessarily stops or blocks malware, because that's not its function. So it may not be a target. But assuming it is, and this is a valid use case requirement, and going from that assumption, it is related to another goal that I've seen. I was just searching for it in the issues because I know it's been proposed, but I think Osquery users are interested in knowing why the Osquery agent shut down or went away, and if Osquery had the ability to sort of report immediately when it's shut down. That may be asking for a lot, since I know that an attacker could theoretically also kill it, without a clean shutdown. But if it was shut down, in the straightforward way, and it had a chance to do a clean shutdown, it could also hypothetically make a log entry or report to the server or something, at least indicating that this was happening. It wouldn't be, it's another thing that can't be solved perfectly, because an attacker could always adapt to that and prevent it. But that's why the threat model is a slippery one of trying to be root versus root. That it's full of imperfect solutions, and that's what makes them a little bit less palatable to people who have to implement them, because they're like, oh, I could do this, but it would be so easily averted if X, Y, Z. And that's why the security model has put that all aside. But if there's other advantages, like if people on certain versions of Linux like to have their daemons on a different path, then it becomes a usability request, and there's another justification for it then.
Well, I guess I feel like there's at least a couple of requests here. one of them is, can the Osquery binary be renamed? I had thought yes, though Stefano says there may be some concerns there, so it's kind of a thing. I don't know. Another one is sort of, can you put it, is it location independent? And the answer to that is absolutely yes. And then, similar service names. But then there's a question of like, how do we view packaging? Do we view the Osquery packaging as sort of a first-class, highly supported, highly configurable thing? Or is it kind of a little bit more of like, here's a simple package. If you want something else, go roll it yourself? I've always taken the latter stance, but maybe that's wrong. It's a static binary. You can kind of do with it what you will.
Yeah, I did actually have a crack at renaming the service myself, but it did go well for me. It actually totally killed it.
So I can tell you that it works fine to run Osquery under any service name you want.
On Windows, I can just rename it to any service name I want, and it'll work.
Absolutely.
It wouldn't even start for me, so I don't know what I was doing. Maybe I'd done it wrong, but maybe there was some residuals from when it was named previously, and then I'd renamed it or something. Like maybe that lock on the DB or something.
I have found two very common classes of problems working with Windows services. One of them is that it is very hard to get path quoting correct in the service definitions. And the other one is that if you have the task manager open while you do anything that changes the service, you can hard lock the entire service management subsystem.
Well, with that, then I might have another go at it, because I can use my RMM to push down PowerShell to do whatever I want, right? So I can use PowerShell to rename the service if it's still after it's been installed, right? I mean, if that's feasible. If you're saying that I can change the service, then yeah, I mean that for me solves it for me. I can just do it myself that way.
I can't speak to the Osquery MSI. So if you reinstall the MSI, you may get all kinds of weird stuff. I don't know MSI details here.
I was going to say that. Yeah, the upgrade process might fail.
Yeah,
that's
but Osquery itself,
I was using the MSI. Yeah.
Yeah, Osquery itself doesn't care. Collide packages Osquery with packaging stuff I wrote under a totally different service name. I'm sure other vendors do as well. So,
perhaps I should be building the binary myself and
you can extract it from the MSI.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. True.
It's path independent. So, what I do is I extract the binary from the MSI, so I keep Osquery's code signatures on it. And,
there are also one or two PowerShell scripts, and I don't know how much they're relied on for like service starting and ending, but there might be something there that's hard-coded or assumes the path.
Yeah, but you don't have to use those. Again, these are like all little convenience things that Osquery ships that you can completely ignore. Ultimately, there's just Osquery D, whatever configs you want.
You can't ignore it, but maybe he was using that, and that's why it wasn't working.
Mm. Yeah, thanks. I'll have another crack at it then with that. That's yeah.
And I mean, I'll sort of say it again, which is that if you don't need MSI functionality, you can completely just skip that. You can drop the binary and service definition however you want it.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to do.
And Windows we don't support Aegis on Windows, so you don't have to ship the Aegis lenses. So I don't even think there's anything else that goes along with it. It's been a while since I've ripped that apart, but.
You might want the enroll cert, but otherwise, depending on what your upstream is.
Yeah, you talking about the certificate for Fleet?
Yes.
Yeah. I've got a thing. I pull the flags file, the secret, and the certificate for Fleet all down. I've got it hosted on my own endpoint and just pull them down using PowerShell. So yeah, that may well be my means to solution for that. Thanks, guys.
Sure. I think if the packaging crowd thinks it's easy to sort of make the prefix settable, I think that's fine. But I think there are also reasonable workarounds around just rolling your own. So I kind of don't feel super strongly about any of it. I see some announcements have been added. Ben?
Hello, everyone. So one of the announcements I want to say is that I've been part of a working group that's doing a workshop at DEF CON, specifically under the Blue Team Village, specifically the threat hunting, and the agent we're going to be using or have used for our exercises, Osquery. So, and that workshop is free and open to everyone. I think the rec one opened yesterday. So if anyone's interested, definitely sign up.
I think someone else in the community is also giving a talk at DEF CON, maybe in the Blue Team Village, about Osquery.
Yep, there's someone else kind of doing a very similar thing. But our thing is kind of like threat hunting, like an actual like threat actor, Ocean Lotus in this. So
cool. Yeah, I think Sebastian on Slack.
yeah.
Anyhow, so
As a request from the community, can you take notes on anything that comes out of that? We would, like usually there's like this disconnect between people that use it and talk about it, and then like people that bring issues to us, and so.
Yeah, so some of the deliverables, everything about the workshop is going to be open source. So everything from like the Terraform to the logs that were generated to the Osquery configs are all going to be open source and everything like that. I think we're even recording the workshop itself, so that'll be posted later. So,
all right.
I think maybe what Mike means, or at least what I mean, is that if you see anything that you wish was different, or like had a feature request, or saw that amongst your users, please tell us, because I don't want to review a workshop video to get that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that this is the right time to bring it up, but I definitely have some things that I can put into like a GitHub issue that I wish would have been there for a workshop / Osquery in general. So I can make some of those issues and bring them up. So
I'd love to see them. Can't promise we'll do them, but be happy to talk about them.
We can probably also add a link to the workshop on the website. We used to have an events page or whatever. I don't know if that's something we do or we don't do anymore.
The page is still there.
Yeah, that's there. You could certainly PR that.
So.
It's in the main page, like scrolling down in the middle, upcoming community events. Yeah, it's like there's a JSON blob somewhere in the website stuff that does that. So if anyone wants to PR this in, by all means. There's a couple too. Josh Bauer just tweeted something. He's got an upcoming Osquery thing too. Well, I guess if I just go down our PR list here, PR 7216 was a request. Mike, that just wants review.
That's Sharples.
Yeah, I think like I've answered or done all the requested changes. It just needs a re-review.
I would imagine Teddy will swing back by that. If he doesn't swing through it before we cut 5.0, I think we could probably just get someone else to, but it looks pretty straightforward. I added PR 6904, just kind of wondering if that was on anyone's radar or if I should try and take a look at it. Anyone thinking about unified logs? Okay, maybe I'll try and pick it up, but no promises. And I guess the other thing people wrote down were the the 5.0 milestone, which we have been not on top of recently.
Yeah, this is where Teddy could be useful if you can make it. But we could start by revisiting what Sharva was starting to say at the top of the hour.
Yeah, so there's one PR from Seth about deprecating Facebook strings in file names and wherever else. And then there is one PR from me, which just needs to clean it up because I made a mess rebasing it, and it needs to be pinned to a new SHA on the packaging repo. That is the 7184. And the only error was like file com.facebook.whatever not found because we are kind of changing everything to io.osquery.
Yeah, what
Whatever.
is this PR? So, sorry, I kind of haven't looked at any of this in like a week or something.
Which one are you looking at? 7184 or 7210?
I was trying to look at 7184, but
yeah, I just pushed and didn't do a fast forward, so it brought in other changes.
What's the other one? The other one we have to do is probably the one from me, right? Which was an update to one from Teddy.
7210.
Thank you. Yeah, I've been seeing conversation happening in this, and I haven't looked at it, so forgive me. I kind of I feel like I just need to check all this out onto my machines and just try and step through a build directly. Okay, so you'll redo 7184, which probably belongs in that 5.0 milestone, and deprecate Facebook naming definitely belongs in that 5.0 milestone. Just sort of skimming this. I'm not really convinced there are any other things that actually have to happen.
Yeah, those are the only two things that's required, and they're both pretty minor at this point.
I think so. There's a issue here about notarization, which I think we're actually already doing in the Osquery packaging.
Yeah, the code sign repo does the notarization.
Right.
Which,
yeah. Okay, I'm going to close this ticket then.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, closed. And I feel like there's a handful of sort of bugs that it would be good to get fixed, but I don't know if we have to block a 5.0 on them. There's your AWS one. There's the Wi-Fi networks on macOS, but I don't think I'd hold a release for any of that. Okay, I don't think I've got. I'll try and find time to look at the 5.0 build stuff again, because I feel like that's probably the only thing that's really left here. And the sooner we can get that merged, the sooner we can start testing to see if the CI builds are working okay. Okay, so you said you'll revisit 7184.
Yeah, I need to clean up all the other comments that I pulled in accidentally just about now, and need to change one file name.
Okay, I think if CI runs, I'm happy to merge sort of both of these as needed.
Okay.
And I think there's a high chance we'll miss something and need another PR to correct
definitely.
it. But
and there might be because we are kind of touching the same files, but renaming com.facebook to io.osquery, so there might be some overlap between both our PRs. So
we'll figure it out. I mean, mine was just to like search for Facebook everywhere, then blindly change it. I don't even remember what you've got in 7184.
That basically adds the main thing is info.plist, which is required for packaging, and ancillary file regarding that, just updating the CMake and CPAC.
Okay, nice. Okay. Hey, we have a new agenda item.
Yeah, just threw that on there. We're not done with the 5.0 issue, are we?
I think we're probably done. Like I don't know. I don't know. There's much to say other than we just have to work through it, and time is always really scarce.
I was interested in getting a pre-release with at least the macOS build signed and notarized in a way that can get some pre-release testing. We always wanted to have this pre-release build.
So as it stands right now, there's a small number of us, Alessandro, me, Teddy, maybe Charbel too, actually, who can basically just generate code signed pre-release builds from what's on master. So as soon as these things merge, we can generate a pre-release build. It'll have the version tag of 49.0-97 or something, not 5.0, but I think that's okay.
Charbel, would that be useful for our customer to test, or?
Yeah, I think that would be useful.
So my expectation is that as soon as Charbel and I revisit and merge these PRs, we'll generate a pre-release build. It will probably find something we missed and not work right, and then we'll have to make a new PR. But if not, it would just be downloadable via, whatever the artifact paths are. We can make that go.
Okay. I know it sounds like I'm in a hurry, but I don't want this to be blocked by Windows code signing issues, which seem like they are maybe the long pole in the tent.
Pre-releases definitely aren't. And at some point, we might decide just to cut 5.0 and keep the Windows code signing as is. I know there are Mac users that pin to code signing. I have not encountered a Windows user that actually pins to code signing.
Hi, Teddy.
Welcome, Teddy. Are you in the office?
Teddy.
I'm back in the office.
Amazing.
Great.
Yeah, 1 day a week. There's no one here. I have the whole place to myself. It's awesome.
Go-kart races. So we were just chatting about all kinds of things. They're minutes. I think 5.0 is mostly, there's Charbel and I both have some PRs that we need to untangle, and I haven't looked at any of this in like a week. Yeah. And yeah, we can definitely cut pre-releases whenever we merge them. So.
Okay, well, if we would like to move ahead, or do you want to get Teddy's opinion on any of the things we just discussed?
I guess I'm wondering like how I can help. I see the two PRs, like, yeah.
Oh yeah, we had that. Charbel had a minor thing for AWS. You had approved it. He made changes, and so revisiting that is something we had on the agenda.
Yeah, and for the packaging one, I need to pin the new Git SHA, which I did, but I also pulled in other changes. I need to, the Git SHA is for the packaging repo. And I missed one file from com.facebook to io.osquery, so I need to update that path and get the CI working on that.
Apple Silicon support.
Right. So we have a milestone. I'm going to paste the link in there, but it's mostly empty. I think what goes in this milestone is a list of libraries that need to be ported, our third-party dependencies. Before I put the issues repo on blast with 24 new issues, I wanted to know if we'd rather track that in a checklist or if that's okay.
It doesn't really matter to me. At least for me, if I'm actually sitting down to do the work, none of this helps me. I would just step through a build and fix whatever I found. But if it helps you project manage it between people, I think it's fine.
The justification here is we want to maybe parallelize this between a couple of people, and we can assign you this library, you do that one. This PR fixes that one, this one fixes that one, which is a little easier.
If it helps you project manage and your team, I think it's fine to kind of do whatever you think is easier.
Okay.
But
I'll be making some issues then.
That's my
I'll
vibe.
put them in that milestone.
I think so. More than just updating the libraries too, a bunch of the libraries would just need configuration rules because we have configuration rules are by Arch and OS in some places. So some of it is just build this library on this platform and include its configuration rule set, and some of it is, and we need to update the library. I looked at this ages ago and just got very turned around. I'm very slow in CMake, so but yeah, if you want to split it up, feel free to make some issues.
It would be my goal that we maybe templatize the process, but at least give some light outline or documentation of what this requires, because then others can help. I don't want we were pretty dependent on Stefano here, and I think we could maybe try to help him out so that at least some of the smaller libraries people can make them build on M1. I got us a Mac Stadium account, so we can test. Only one of us has an M1 laptop at this point, and we're on 3-year upgrade cycles, so I don't think we want to wait for that. So we're just gonna try to collaborate here. So this is getting ahead of us, but I guess we will need a CI pipeline runner for Apple Silicon, and I don't know when that'll happen for GitHub Actions, but I guess we can have self-hosted runners in GitHub Actions. Is that right? Okay, I got nods and shaking. Does anyone know authoritatively?
I think the issue is the same with setting up the runners for ARM. So having to handle all the authentication, security, and stuff. So,
okay.
Oh. Yeah, I was just going to do a TLDR of what we found is that there's really no secure way to have the runners work for contributors and testing their pull requests. What we can do is copy what we did for Arch 64 and just have the CI run for mergers into master.
So it's a little bit even thornier. So there's a couple of problems with M61. So as Teddy mentioned, the short form is GitHub runners currently do not have good security context, which makes it very hard to check PRs. I see action on the GitHub tickets there, so maybe someday they'll merge something, but I don't know. There's an additional issue where I don't know where we would host an M1 runner, right? For the Graviton stuff, AWS has provided us resources where we can host those CI runners and build machines if we need to. So we know how to do that. It's less clear to me where we would host an M1 runner. Maybe we would just end up figuring out how to do it inside Mac Stadium. But that's going to have a lot of persistence. It's not like a spin up a VM and then destroy it kind of thing. That's much more of a, like the turnaround on getting a new Mac Stadium machine is hours or days, not, seconds. So is it minutes now? Last time I got one, it was not minutes.
I signed up for it and then I changed tabs and it was already done. So that was pretty good.
AWS has macOS instances now.
Do they have M1s?
They are starting to approve people for M1s. I had a test machine, but it was x86, a bit pricier because AWS, but they have it. So you can use it as any. It's not completely like EC2. It's like a dedicated EC2. Like you need to at least have it for 24 hours. Or that's how they bill you.
I'm going to say let's not get too caught up in the weeds of CI because it may well be 6 months before we finish an M1 port, and who knows what our options will look like in 6 months.
So I think another project in here. So I would support breaking out the tasks for getting M1 support into issues, because in my mind, one of them is how do we actually distribute the fat binary that has support for both architectures? And if that was scoped out just a little bit, I would be happy to take that on.
Universal binary? Jarvan knows a little bit about that.
I know a little bit there. What's your question?
Just for the code sign repo, I think we'd have to make some changes to how we bundle it. So we're just going to need someone to figure that out and make a couple of changes if my assumption is correct. I'm also trying to figure out how I can help here. So if both of you sort of understand that, you have access to that repo, you can make those changes, take on that, and I can use my time to go into the configuration for the third-party libraries and make sure that we get an M1 configuration there. It's probably a better use of my time.
Yeah. I think there will be a mix of easy libraries and then a couple really tough ones.
Yeah.
The universal binaries, the thing that's going to be the hardest about universal binaries is just that we need a build platform for M1s.
Yeah.
So if we have a build platform for M1s that uploads a binary somewhere, then we just change the packaging code to fetch both binaries and stitch them together. And it's 3 lines of SH.
Yeah, exactly.
But, the step prior is the the big one. And I don't know if there are cross-compilation possibilities for this.
I think there are.
We would also need to update CMake to the newer version. They introduced a couple of related environment variables, CMake variables. Sorry, Stefan, go ahead.
Oh no, I did a very simple test, but months ago. It is possible via CMake on x86 to create a fat binary that has both x86 and ARM64. Although here the problem with the problem, it might be a problem, it might not be a problem. We'll still have to see how we will have to handle the version of the third-party libraries we have, because we may need to diverge version between x86 and M1. Because the version or actually maybe more the version between macOS and Linux. Anyway, we may have to do separate versions. x86 have one version and M1 another version, and this means that you cannot do a single build once, let's say from CMake, and have it stitched them together in a single pass. Although you were saying it is also possible to stitch them via a separate pass. Okay, so yeah.
So at least on macOS, there's a shell utility
Lipo.
called Lipo,
Okay.
which will happily stitch together arbitrary architectures. It just
see.
concats them together and puts a header at the beginning. Like there's no clever disk savings, right? This is part of whatever the.
So they could even be totally different binaries, basically. Okay, yeah. Okay, sorry, no, I then this is not really a problem. Never mind.
If you could do it all inside CMake, that's appealing on a different axis, because if we could cross-compile them, that lets us use a more consistent set of build machines, and we don't have to go through as many hoops. Although I guess it's a little bit weird because we probably still want to test the output on an M1. So I don't know. There's like a can of worms there, but I like having the option, maybe. Anyone got anything else?
Hey, Zach.
Hey, y'all. Sorry to be dramatically late here. If I've got something I'd be interested in chatting about if other folks are good.
Yep.
Has anyone ever looked into, so Osquery supports like TLS client auth for mutual TLS. And I believe that you have to drop a certificate just onto disk in order to use that with Osquery. Has anyone ever looked into using like the system cert store, like Keychain on macOS, for storing those certs more securely and then being able to pull them into Osquery?
I swear I saw an issue go by once for this, but I don't remember. I don't think anyone looked into it. Actually, Teddy had some comments. I think they were roughly that using certs out of the system cert stores is like a different set of code paths, and someone would just have to go through and normalize it all.
Okay, so the main obstacle is like someone has to write the code. And are there, I mean, so I'm most familiar with macOS probably on this aspect. So there's Keychain on macOS. Are there equivalent APIs on Windows and Linux?
Windows has a certificate store API. I can't tell you anything about it, but there's code in the certificates table.
Okay.
And I don't know of anything on Linux offhand.
Okay. Awesome.
This might be a tad complex as you start to like peel back the layers of the onion.
Yeah.
Like for example, if you try to use certificates and the equivalent private key pair from Keychain and then Windows Cert Store, you probably have to do the whole end-to-end set TLS session through their APIs. Right, it's not like you can just like pull the private key blob out and like pass that to an OpenSSL API.
Right.
So I think if this is a worthwhile endeavor, absolutely, but it's going to be quite a bit of work to complete it end to end.
Awesome. Thanks for that insight.
just a heads up. Now that I see that we have some funding, in the past we've contacted the SQLite authors and asked them to build some new features into SQLite that we needed, which is really helpful. We can always do that again. Obviously, they've left an open door, especially Dr. Richard Hupp, to say if you ever need any features, I think their engagement model has changed. It used to be join the consortium, the SQLite consortium, for a certain yearly donation, and then with that you can prioritize a couple feature requests. I think that engagement model has changed, but I think the same concept is still there. If we need anything with an Osquery that isn't available in SQLite, we can just ask. We can ask for it, and then have a discussion about how to actually implement that. So if you've noticed anything that would be awesome features, we should scope that out. One thing that comes to my mind is just how we handle containers, and we do have an API for that, thanks to what Stefano built. If we could imagine up maybe Bike Shed a more ergonomic way to have a virtual table apply to a specific container, and in that bike shedding we could say here's how a query would look. We could bring that to SQLite and just see if it's possible. If there are other ideas like that where it's just non-ergonomic using SQLite to do what you want to do, we should get those scoped out.
There's something I feel like
action.
There's a thing I've encountered in our tables a bunch, and I don't know if this is how we use SQLite or inherent in SQLite, and maybe one of you folk know. Most of our tables take a query context, and then they do things like for every path in the query context, do this thing, right? But what I have found is that those generate functions are never called with an array of paths. So we have this thing where we I've written a lot of code that basically says extract the array of paths from the query context and then do this thing with this array. But it's actually just always being called with a singleton each time. And I always write the code to sort of handle it in case we ever fix what seems like a performance thing. But I don't know if this is inherent or what. I see some giggles, so I know you all know what I mean.
Yeah, I've seen it before. Between the other long list of things I would have liked to look into. Yeah, I'm not really sure. Just saying, I'm not really sure why it is behaving like that. It seems maybe I'm missing something about how the SQL has to run internally to be correct for SQL, and although for us it's a problem. Okay, I don't know if anyone else knows more about it.
I was giggling because I just tested this last night because I had the same concern, and I read through the virtual table documentation SQLite on the train ride over this morning to see what's going on. So I found that if you select star from file where path whatever, end path whatever, you'll actually get a context that has two expressions in it. So it does work. I think so yeah, I can go into depth about how the query planner actually tries to make those optimizations, but the TLDR is yes, most of the time that context only has one constraint operator expression, but it can have multiple.
So I had been thinking it was probably either query planner related or related to the way we set up our tables as ephemeral tables. If you think it's query planner related, then that makes me think that if we declare something as being an index, then probably the query planner says, oh, great, you get one, versus if we declare it as being an additional, then it probably comes through as a pair. But I haven't tested this. I'm sort of speculating here.
Yeah, when you set it as an index, you are saying that there's only one. Well, yeah, you're saying that the table, the row is unique with that specific. Well, if the content of that column is unique, then the whole row is unique. And when you join two tables using that column, so an index column, it will pass you only one constraint and look through all the rows on one table to match it on the other table.
I feel like I don't have a good understanding of the SQLite query planning stuff, and I feel like sometimes I trip on it.
The reasoning there is that, so they expect that the cost of querying a single row is like lower, and it's like, let's say O1, like one operation, because all the data is already in the database. It's already there. You don't have to do anything else, if not the minimum work to get that out. But the problem is that we have to do more work, much more work to get that information out, even if we are able to optimize and extract less data and pass less data to SQLite. So yeah.
I wonder if there's a better value for those ratios for us. Like, because I'm pretty sure we can tune them. I remember seeing that bit of code somewhere in virtual.cpp. So I wonder if we can tune them. And I sort of also wonder if that should be different on different tables. Like, is it actually consistent for us, or do we need it? Do we need to bubble that up into a spec file into the table specs?
You're absolutely right, though. So the developer experience here for defining a spec, actually using the query context, and I would say constructing row structures and passing them out of the table implementation needs a bit of a love.
Yeah, we were bumping into this in a PR I had up recently too, where like Stefano, Teddy, and I were talking about, and a really common idiom we use is something like query context, open bracket, quote, column name, quote, close bracket, which Stefano points is like suboptimal, but it's actually the only pattern we use everywhere. So I think some PR I have open is like the first time we're using find in that way, and we could use a helper. I don't think that's a SQLite consortium thing. That's just a yeah.
Yeah, an SQLite consortium thing would be like the example I guess I had with the containers is you can use tables as functions. Like, so you can imagine like select star from path, open bracket, and then the actual path that you want, close bracket. And that seems much more natural than having a where clause. But there's some limitations to that built into SQLite, which we could ask to fix. Like, I think it's just some code underneath an SQLite that actually brings that usage of SQL close to like how you would just naturally think I'm going to call a file as a function and provide some parameters to it. I think we could do something else like that, where we abstract away the actual query to container listing. So imagine there's like several different tables that abstract the concept of like what a container is. And that happens behind the scenes such that you call any virtual table that we have right now, like Debian packages or whatever, and you do some operator that says, I would like this data to be on all the running containers, or some expression that selects containers, and you get that back. I think that would be a bit more natural. Though I'm hand waving a lot of this here. This is why we would have like a bike shedding document where we figure that out and then go to SQLite and say, like, could you please implement this? Plus, here's some money.
Teddy, are you referring to the what they call table valued functions?
I don't think so. I think table valued functions are functions that only apply to certain tables. I think there's another name for, I think they're I don't know how to say this word, like the eponymous only tables.
Yeah. Eponymous only. Yeah.
I think if you look at that documentation within virtual tables, you'll see it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Charvel, you stuck your hand up.
Yeah, this is more like developer oriented. Speaking of SQLite as well, we have a lot of code where like select all from OS version table. Like when we want to figure out like, hey, are we running this on macOS 10.14 or 11.2 or whatever? Is there a better way to do that rather than like doing a SQLite call at the start, like runtime figuring out what version one is running? Because this is going back to the Wi-Fi networks table, which is broken with the latest macOS update because Apple changed things underneath us, and we'll need yet another like, hey, if it's on this one, here's that file, and here's how we parse that kind of deal. Wondering if anyone has thoughts. There are other like system APIs, but we don't have a unified way to do it.
Yeah, the only thing I can say, I don't know if we have, but I would totally support creating an API instead of making a query. This goes back again with the fact that if we have, well, in this case, it's another table, but in general, it's better not to create these kind of dependencies between tables. And also, and another similar situation is with the core. Again, the core depending on tables, and this causes blow up in the build size when you build tests for reasons. Yeah, that's all I have.
Seems reasonable to create an API for, there's like only a couple of things where we do that regularly. So, you know, tossing them into some
is still up.
run once style API seems like a pretty small C++ ask.
Yeah, I think it won't be like super high priority, but I would like to kind of do that. I don't know like what Windows APIs are there to like do the same thing, but I'm sure we kind of do that pattern everywhere. So
yeah, I mean, we should we should be so the code to get the version it's already there, sort of in the tables. We should really have a common interface in the end.
Yeah.
I feel like even if this interface ultimately just ran the same select, we'd still get value by having a consistent API in some kind of run once pragma.
I mean, yeah, if you were suggesting maybe creating a C++ like function interface, which still calls a select, yeah, but at least we decide what is the interface returning. Yeah, I mean, yeah, if it's too length, not too long, sorry, to do remove the SQLite part, yeah, at least it's one good step in that direction.
It puts it in a box, and then you can change what's in the box.
Yeah.
Anyone, we're a little after 2 now. Anyone want to say anything else about SQLite developer experience or anything else on your mind? If not, maybe we call it. Thank you all for coming. Have a great 2 weeks. Nice to see your faces.
Thanks for hosting.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.